Hi, everybody. I'm Bruce Carlson of the ARP Washington State office in Seattle. And today we're talking passwords on Fraud Watch Friday and password managers in particular. And this is a subject I'm very curious about. They are recommended by a lot of experts, and I don't understand it too well, but I do have somebody here who does understand it. And that's our lead cyber safety volunteer, Dave Morrow. So hi, Dave. How's things like in Bellingham these days?
It's kind of warm up here today, but it's beautiful.
Is it? It's warm here too, thankfully. I'm in Snoqualmie. Ordinarily, when we do these presentations in person, but due to the pandemic, which is still ongoing, we are bringing you these Fraud Watch Fridays virtually online. And so today, our topic is something that we talk a lot about in our fraud seminars, and that's using a password manager to manage your passwords. And if you're like me, you've got a ton of passwords. You're getting more all the time. I try and be good about not using the same password all the time, which means I've got a ton of passwords. I don't remember any of them. Half the time when I type in a password, it says password invalid. So Dave, you got some solutions for us today on password managers, right?
Right. So like you said, we've been telling people for a long time not to reuse their passwords in more than one place and change their passwords and have the strong passwords and all that. So one of the best ways to keep from having to write it down on a yellow sticky and stick it on the wall or keep a notebook is to use a password manager. And a password manager is simply a piece of software that you can install on your laptop or your desktop or your mobile phone or whatever, and it will take all your passwords and your user IDs and all your websites and all your applications, and it'll store them encrypted on your device. And then when you go to that application or go to that website and want to log in, it'll log you in automatically and you don't even have to remember it. So what I've got here is a couple of demonstrations of a couple of, there's a bunch of password managers out there. And some of them are free and some of them will cost a little bit. And I've got a couple of them to show you because these two are fairly similar. And then we'll talk about, all the other password managers that you may want to look at. There's a website you can go to that tells you some of the best rates through an independent lab, some of the best password managers out there. So you just pick one out that fits your lifestyle and the way you want to operate.
All right. Well, that sounds great. And you actually are going to show us how these things work, right? So I'm going to bring up your screen.
Okay.
And there you go.
Okay. Today go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, take it away. Okay. I'm watching with interest.
Two of the password managers we'll talk about. One is called LastPass and the other is called Dashlane. Now, they both offer a free version and well, they don't have really a free version, but they have one where you have like a 30-day demonstration and then you decide whether you like it or not. So you can, most of these we'll talk about will give you a 30-day trial run. For example, you can install it and play with it and see if you like it because, other different people like different ones. This is LastPass. Now, if you go to LastPass, you have to have yourself, any password manager, you have to have a master password for your account. And this is very important. When you establish your account, you've got to get yourself a really good master password. And you probably want to write that one down somewhere because you can't lose it. Because if you lose your master password, you can't get into your application. You can't get into your password manager. But this is LastPass website. So I'm going to log in and show you what LastPass can do. Now, one of the things about any of these is that it will, it takes a while sometimes to come up, like you see, but it'll fill in your user ID and password here. Now, this is mine for when I use LastPass and my other one. So let me type in, that's my LastPass uses you give them a password. I mean, you give them an email address that you want to use as your main, both your email address and your user ID. So that's the one I set up for this. And then you do a master password. And this is, again, a password that I set up for the demo. And I can look at it to make sure, yep, this is the one I typed in. And then it will sign in. So this and Dashlane both look a lot alike, and I'll show you Dashlane real quick if we have time, and you can see how it looks. So when you look at that LastPass, one of the things you'll see is you can put a lot more than just your passwords in there. You can put secure notes to yourself, or you can put an address, a set of addresses, and things you want to keep. You can have your credit cards in there, your bank account numbers. So here is, for example, I have set up CNN as one of the websites I go to. Okay, so when I go to CNN's website, and this is how it stores your user ID and your password and the URL. So it just asks you for the URL is www.cnn.com. Here's the username, and here's the password I use to get into CNN. And when I save it, so one of the things this does is, though, it will remember this. So when I click on launch, it'll go to CNN. And this is what you normally when you go to CNN, you're not signed in. But if you have a password manager, it will, and you can go up here and log in. It will fill in for me my user ID and password automatically. So I don't have to, there we go. I don't have to log in myself, see? So it should fill it in. And if it doesn't, I go up here to the LastPass little icon, and there it is. It did it. It just took it a while. See, it just filled in my user ID and my password on its own, and then I can log in. And of course, it tells me now I've got an invalid password. So I'll try it again. We were laughing about this before we started. This was a perfect example of Murphy's Law. So let me try to log in again and see what it says. But you see it does do the user ID and password, and then you can log in yourself. Now, the other thing is that when you have LastPass, one of the things is when you first establish an account, like if you go to your bank and establish your account, and it tells you online, it says, choose a user ID, choose a password, then you type it in there, LastPass, and both LastPass and the other one we'll talk about, Dashlane, both will pop up and say, hey, you've got a new password here. Do you want to save it? And if you say yes, it'll just automatically save it for you in here. Then the next time you go to that website, it'll fill out the user ID and password, fill it in for you, and you don't even have to remember it, don't even have to look at it. But if you need to, you can always look at it by coming here and doing this little wrench, which is the edit, and it tells you what the site password is. There's my site password, for example, and there's the user ID. And if I want to change the password on CNN, I have to go. And I'm on the website and I change the password, or I'm on my bank and I change my password. Remember, we tell you to change it. It'll pop up and tell you, hey, you changed this password. Do you want to save the new password? And you just say yes, and that's how you keep track of it. It really does make life a whole lot easier. Now, sometimes people ask, this is really very scary. I don't know how to do it. And so one of the things that I wanted to do is show you using the other one we were talking about, which is Dashlane. Use Dashlane to show you how easy it is to sign in. Now, Dashlane is another password manager like LastPass, and it is very similar to it. You'll see when we sign in, you'll see it's very similar to LastPass in the sense the way it looks. So there's my account, ARP Dave Demo, and here's the password here's my master password. And don't try this at home because I'm going to change it right after this. So, but when Dashlane comes up, you'll see it looks a lot like the LastPass that we talked about. So see, here's my CNN one that I put in there. Here's Google. Again, the same accounts. You can do notes. I put a note in here that is secure. So then that can be a note to myself. I can keep personal information in here if I want to. I can put payment cards in here, credit cards. I can share the data. Now, one of the things that this one will do, and the other one will do too, LastPass, is give you an idea of your password health. Now, I've only got 2 passwords in here, and so it doesn't give me really a score, but it looks at your passwords to see if you've got one that is password or something like that. And then it'll tell you, hey, you shouldn't have that. So that's another good thing. And it'll also, both of them also will monitor all your passwords and user IDs in LastPass or in Dashlane, and look for, in the dark web, look for those to be somebody's trying to sell them, or somebody's trying to give them away, or somebody posts them on the web or the dark web. They monitor that for you. Now, this is a trial version. LastPass and Dashlane both have 30-day trials. There's others that have other ones that are not. The best way to compare, again, I told you that a good thing is to just look at these, and this is the PC Magazine Best Password Manager. They have a lab that every year does a standard testing lab that tests these all kinds of different software, antivirus, VPNs, those things we talk about. PC Magazine has every year, the top 10 or the top 12. This is how they rate password managers, and you can go to PC Magazine and look at, here's LastPass and here's Dashlane, and this also tells you the good things and the bad things about each one of them, right? And so you look at them and say, okay, what are the pros, what are the cons, and if there's some that looks like they're better than others, then you can do a 30-day trial and see if you like it, and if not, you can move on to the next one and decide. There's also, finally, free password managers, and so these, again, have a 30-day free trial, but then you have to either pay for them or it's no longer usable. There's a set of free password managers. The difference is free password managers will usually let you only do one device, one laptop or one mobile device or whatever. These will usually, the ones you pay for, like Dashlane and LastPass, will let you use multiple ones. So you can have your phone, you can have your laptop, you can have a PC or a tablet, all of them using LastPass or all of them using Dashlane, and you and your spouse or you and your significant other can also share it and use it together. So it really is much easier. I've used a password manager for almost 10 years, I guess now, and it's very easy to use, and I just don't know what we'd do without one. So I urge you to use a password manager. Look on the web, just Google best password manager ratings, and the PC Magazine will show up. Like all security tools, I warn you, don't go, when you Google for the best password manager or best antivirus, don't pick the ones at the very top of the search results, because those are all ads. And some of those will be actually hackers who are trying to sell you software that is got malware already in it. But go to PC Magazine or some other reputable service that will rate these things and make them up, look at them and decide for yourself which one's the best one to use. So Bruce, I think we're about out of time.
Well, I've got a couple questions for you if you got a few minutes.
Sure.
And actually, one thing that I do want to say is ARP does not endorse any particular password manager. We just endorse the idea of using a password manager. Right. And as Dave mentioned, there are many, and we picked out a couple of the better known ones to take a look at. But that doesn't mean that we're recommending them for your particular use. So I think the advice is go out and look at the reviews, go out and look what's being offered, and see which one works best for you. And I guess the question I have is, if I'm looking at these password managers, what would you look for in what the features and reputation is like? How would you go about looking for the best password manager?
Well, I would personally look at one that's first of all easy to use. I would test drive several of them and see how they pick up when I establish a new account somewhere. Do they easily pick it up and include it in my password manager without me having to do a whole lot of cutting and pasting of passwords and stuff. I would also look at how many devices I use, because again, I have it on all of my I have my password manager on the same one on all of my devices, and I pay for mine because it's such a useful tool. So I would certainly, personally, in my lifestyle and the way I have so many computers, I certainly want to have a password manager on every one of them. If you only have one device and you don't have anybody else you need to share it with on their phone or their laptop, then you may be able to use a free one. But I would look at that. I'd also look at how long they've been around. The ones that we showed as the PC Magazine ones, pretty much all of them have been around in some shape or form. There've been a lot of course, like everywhere else, companies have been bought and products have been renamed and all that, but the products have been around for a while. So that's why I tell you, don't just search best password manager in Google and pick the first one that comes up, because you're probably not going to get one of those. You're going to get somebody who's paid for an ad for that, and that could be a good one, or it could be some hacker that's built, has some software that he's got malware in it, and his marketing is that.
Yeah, so I think the important thing is to do your own research, but I think we've given
Absolutely.
you a good starting point. If you look at the reputable publications and look at their ratings, as opposed to ads or the first thing that comes up on a search. But I think the question that a lot of people have is my information safe in the password manager? I'm giving them all my passwords, which is one thing, but what happens if they get hacked?
Well, and that's a very legitimate question, and something you probably should be concerned about. One of the things that I would also look for, and all of these products I believe do this, is they encrypt the data that you give them. Both LastPass and Dashlane have a browser extension you can put in there in your browser in Firefox or Chrome, and it will hold your passwords in your browser, but it encrypts them. And as long as it's encrypted, whether it's on your computer or on the computer in the cloud or both, then you're safe. Now, of course, you can go out and Google and see, who got hacked. One of the leaders got hacked 5, 10, 12 years ago. It wasn't a big one. It wasn't a big problem, but you might want to know that. But they've certainly changed their tightened up a lot. And I've been doing this for 40 years, and you can count on one hand the amount of times that a password manager has gotten hacked. Now, Murphy's Law being, as soon as I say that, tomorrow one of them will be. But you don't really hear about these guys getting hacked that much, and as long as it's encrypting my data, as long as it's storing it encrypted wherever it stores it in the cloud or here, then I'm not as worried about it as I might be otherwise. I'm certainly not as worried about it as if I keep it on a Microsoft Word document that's stored unencrypted in my laptop, so somebody can get into it and then have all my passwords, which is the way I used to do it 15 years ago.
Yeah, I have to say that I have to confess, and I know we've talked about this, and I'm changing my ways, because you and several other experts, including a guy who is a dark web criminal who can hack anything, I guess, said, password managers are safe. So, I take your word for it. But I've got my passwords on a list that is behind a password. So it's not totally out there. But, I also have like an increasing number of passwords, on the phone, apps on the phone. I've got my work computer here. I've got a personal computer. I've got a tablet. And you're saying that I could use a password manager to compress all those passwords into one place. So when I sign in on the phone or I sign in on one of my different computers, I can just have the one password. Yep. Is that how it works?
That's right. That's exactly right. And that's what I mean by sharing it across devices. And also it will, at least a couple of these password managers have a utility where you'll go in and it will look at all your passwords and tell you, hey, you've got X number of duplicates, you need to change them. You've got 3 or 4 passwords that are the same. That's dangerous. You need to change them. Or one of them will nag you. And I find that a little annoying, so I probably wouldn't buy that one, but it will pop up every now and then and say, you've got 15 passwords that are all the same. And I don't like that, but it certainly makes it easier and more organized, because you can use one list on one password manager, have it installed on all your devices if you have a paid version, and then you just share the same password across all those devices.
Well, that sounds good. And I actually plan this afternoon to go in and do this, because I have one that I downloaded on your recommendation. So I have it on one computer, but I haven't filled it out because it's, it takes a little bit of work up front, right, to enter your password. You have to do that.
Right. And some of them are better. And this is another thing you might want to look for. Some of them have tutorials. Like Dashlane, for example, has a tutorial that kind of walks you through establishing your account and putting your first password in your account and using it and installing it in your browser and installing it on, downloading a version for your phone and all that. So some of them are more user friendly, some of them are less user friendly, and that's what I mean by looking at what fits your lifestyle, right, and what your knowledge level.
Great. Well, I think that's a good start in the password realm. I'm going to work on this afternoon, or if not this weekend. I promise by the next time we do one of these things, I'm going to have it set up, and I'll report back.
All right, I'll be checking up on you.
I know. So I've had this password manager downloaded for, it's got to be since our last year's consumer campaign, which was a year ago. So that's long enough. I'm gonna get it done. But speaking of getting things done, I wanted to mention to people that if you would like a presentation like this, but not just on passwords, on the idea of fraud in general, we have an hour-long comprehensive fraud watch presentation that volunteers, including Dave, do, and we're doing those online right now. And if you would like one for your group, you can you can check out our website at arp.org/WAS Speakers Hub, and there you'll get all the information on how you can get a presentation for your group, if it's a church group, civic group, school group, neighborhood group. We love to get this information out to people because it's so important. And we've been hearing a lot about gift card scams lately and people being taken, and the romance scams, IRS scams, robocall scams. So all those are covered, not in as much detail as we've talked about passwords, but it's a general primer on fraud to help you and your loved ones stay safe from fraud. And also, if you think that you might be in the midst of being defrauded, or a relative is, or if you've had any questions about fraud, please, you can call our ARP fraud helpline, and the number there is 877-908-3360. And on the other end is a trained ARP Fraud Watch volunteer who can help you with advice or guide you to the right place to get help for your personal situation. And that's staffed during business hours. We have an office of that here in Seattle, although no one's in the office. Our volunteers are all doing it from home, but they love to help you out with that. And the last thing I'll mention is our Fraud Watch Network website, which is the repository of a great deal of information on fraud. And if you have any questions about fraud, including password managers, that's a good place to start. So with that, Dave, is there anything that we have not mentioned?
No, I just encourage folks to go try out a password manager, take a little time, feel comfortable with it, and then go for it. You won't be sorry.
Great. Well, thank you. This is a lot of information, but the thing I love about it is it's actionable information. It's something you can do, right now to make yourself both safer and make your life easier. So with that, we'll close out this week's Fraud Watch Friday. We'll be back next week with an edition of Ask Dave Anything, which I shouldn't say anything.
Don't ask me anything. I might give you an answer and you might want to hear, but
But it's ask Dave your questions on fraud. He is a true cybersecurity expert. He had a full career in military counterintelligence, and then also in the financial sector and private business. And he continues to stay up on the latest developments in the cyber world. So it's just a privilege to have you to answer these questions. And I know a lot of your knowledge is way above the knowledge that we can use, but it's so great to have you boil things down and get to the bottom of sort of the information that you hear out there. So that'll be next Friday live at 1:00. So if you have questions about anything related to email security, phishing, any kind of cyber scam, we will take that on. And if you want to ask questions in advance, you can leave them in the comments here on this video. So with that, we'll say goodbye, and we'll see you next week.
See you later.